Recovery is stupendous.
Achievable.
Hope.
Freedom.
Empowering.
It's unique to everyone.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Getting a new lease on life.
It's finding restoration after you fall down.
Recovery is having the freedom to enjoy life.
For me, it was finding a way to really love myself.
My recovery is possible in part because of my own sense of purpose.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Recovery Talks podcast. I'm Andi Daniel.
And I'm Jim Haney.
This episode, we're going to be talking about self-care.
Yes, we are, Andy. This is a good topic.
Yeah, it's kind of timely right now. It just happened that this was on our schedule for this month, but there's some isolation that we're having to do right now because of the COVID-19 outbreak. And so it's a good time to talk about the things that you can do to take care of yourself in a stressful time, whether it's this outbreak or you're just stressed at work or there's a snowstorm and you're stuck in your house for a week.
Exactly. And I think being stuck inside, for me, one of the things is, how do I stay physically active?
Yeah.
Because I would normally, walk to work and walk home and each day make sure I get outside and, I'm doing things. So that can be a challenge with what's going on. Or like you said, it could be just a snowstorm, or maybe we're not feeling well. Maybe we're just not feeling well. And so we're kind of stuck at home. How do we stay physically active, physically well? How do we take care of ourselves? So we'll work our way all through the different we're looking at a self-care wheel is what we're looking at. So different elements. What do you like to do, Andy, to take care of yourself physically?
Well, physically for me, really, I think my focus a lot of times is on sleep. I have some trouble sleeping sometimes. And so sort of doing those rituals that help calm me down in the evenings. I stay off of Facebook and stuff like that when it gets close to bedtime, because then I get all keyed up if there's something, that catches my attention or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I have to kind of do those little things. And I think part of that is recognizing when that is affecting the rest of my life, right? Like I could maybe not sleep well for a couple of days and be okay. But once it hits a point where it's interfering and stuff, I really need to stop and focus on making sure I've got those rituals and that I'm doing the best I can to get the rest I need.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I think for me, it's about, like I said, getting out and walking or riding my bicycle when the weather's nice. I love to get my bike out and go for a bicycle ride. And that always really helps me to feel better. And if I can get out and go hiking, that's the ultimate, that's the best one. But that can be really challenging in the wintertime, and the weather's sort of up and down or snowing or sleeting, those kinds of things where the weather's not ideal. Sometimes that's not possible. So I think like you, the sleep one is a big one. And then also just taking time off work, having time and getting away. It doesn't have to be even like a formal vacation, but just getting out, maybe going somewhere, maybe take a ride to like Billings or something. My wife and I will go, and just getting out really helps quite a bit. And then also, I'm not a big like pill taker, but I definitely notice a difference when I get on a regimen of taking vitamins, or supplements. Definitely help me to feel better for sure. That's a big one.
Yeah. And of course, other things that fall into that can be healthy eating.
Oh yeah. That's a big one right there. I think healthy eating, making sure you're getting fruits and vegetables, right? And not just drinking soda pop and eating candy bars all the time, right? All right. So what's another area of self-care that we need to consider.
Another one is psychological, which can kind of go along with like intellectual if you're thinking of it as the 8 dimensions of wellness. So things like learning new things, practicing some creativity can help you with that. Spending some time doing an activity that is helpful to you, but not necessarily focused on physical, right? So gardening or painting or, something like that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, gardening's a great one. Getting out and whether you're growing flowers or herbs or vegetables, I think just the practice itself of gardening is really beneficial. Watching something grow and then having to take care of it, water and seedlings, keeping it warm and sunlight, those kinds of things. So that's definitely also another one that I find myself doing is especially this time of year or like in the winter, not so much in the summertime, but like soaking up the sun, like the sun pops out and maybe it's been kind of cold and snowy for a few days and it's like, oh, the sun, and just like being very mindful, just like pausing and just letting the sun, feel it on my face, let it sort of heat up my body is pretty cool. Feels really good and definitely has a psychological impact for me. Makes me feel a lot better.
Yeah, another thing I think is you could join a support group, right? And so that sort of feeds your psychological well-being, being with people of similar circumstances, or even just, connecting with people online or on the phone or something like that. Some of that sort of social, but I guess if it's a focus on your psychological well-being, it's slightly different than social self-care, right? So, finding that support somewhere and making a point to actually do that. I think sometimes we let those things fall away when we get busy or overwhelmed.
For sure. Yeah, I think there's some of the activities or things you're doing definitely hit on more than one. Because like when you said the support group one, I think of the social support, but I also think of the emotional support that comes along with that. And so I think it's great when you can find things that, you might list it in like this one. We were talking about psychological support, but they carry over or spill over into other areas, and you sort of get a twofer or threefer. When you're doing something, you get a boost in these other areas because they're all tied together as we go through our journey of recovery and we're working on improving our lives. We're doing things and they're helping us in a multitude of ways. They're not just helping us in one way. So finding those that can help us in multiple areas, I think is pretty cool.
Yeah. So that one, bleeds over into emotional. So other things that you can do to practice self-care for your emotional well-being, you can, spend some time laughing with someone or, watch something funny.
Do some laughter yoga.
Yeah, laughter yoga. Yeah.
There you go. If you don't know what that is, after you're done with this podcast, Google it. And if you're going to Google it, commit to doing it. There's some short ones. There's some short videos online that you can do, even if you're just doing one of the short, like 10-minute ones. But make the commitment to do it, and you will see it will have a big impact on you, because just talking about it's making me laugh right now. Yeah, laughter yoga is a good one. Another good one with laughter, I did this one, is to watch a comedy routine, each day or each week, and to make a point, being mindful of it, right? So if you're on whatever, one of the streaming channels, Netflix or Amazon or whoever you're doing, Hulu, to watch a stand-up comedy routine, make a big difference in your life. You'll find yourself laughing, and that sort of becomes contagious. And definitely helps you to feel better.
How about spiritual? What kinds of things do you think you do, Jim, for your spiritual well-being?
Well, this is one of my twofers. So if I go hiking, particularly if I'm in the backcountry like of Yellowstone, or I'm getting like up into the mountains, is really kind of a spiritual practice for me. And so I not only get the physical aspect, the well-being from that, the endorphins and everything, getting outside, but there's definitely a spiritual side to it. Spending long periods of time out in nature. And I think the longer you can spend outside, the better it is for me. And there's just something about it helping me to understand the world with a greater sense of the world, not just the world as my day-to-day life, but sort of this bigger sense, being around mountains and herds of elk or bison, bears, that kind of thing, that they're living in the world like I am, and they don't care that I'm in recovery. They're just going about their business, and it's definitely spiritual for me. How about for you, Andi?
Spiritual's a little fuzzier for me. I think it's important that spiritual doesn't mean church, right? Which, right. I mean, yours is an example of that it's not religion necessarily. But I think, finding somebody who has the same kind of beliefs and values and sort of connecting with that person is helpful spiritually. Somebody that you don't have to argue with, or, whatever, just sharing those values and those beliefs is helpful.
Yeah, like you might volunteer.
Yeah.
You might go volunteer somewhere at a cause that you believe in. So maybe it's the animal shelter, right?
Yeah.
You love cats and dogs, and you go and you volunteer there. I mean, you get around other people who share similar values as you do. And so that can be really important.
Right.
And also, I think it helps us find a sense of self, a sense of purpose, and you're not doing that for a paycheck. I think that's an important aspect of it, and it's not to be undervalued. We don't have to, if you're volunteering again at an animal shelter or something, you're not getting a paycheck. You're doing it because you love it, and all the other people there are probably feel the exact same way, which is not necessarily the case if you have a job. Even if you're passionate about it at times, you may not always feel the same way, and you're getting paid to do it. So it's a very different experience.
Yeah. So that kind of leads into like professional or vocational, depends on, what term you want to use for that. Something that you can do for your self-care, I think, is set some good boundaries, good professional boundaries. Like a lot of times you hear, don't take your work home with you. And okay, for peer supporters, that can be difficult sometimes, right? I mean, those people are still going to be on your mind potentially, but building those boundaries and saying, okay, but this time when I'm at home is my time. I don't need to focus on the things at work that are a problem, or,
Yeah. For sure. Those of you who are listening who are peer supporters, learning to turn your phone off is really important for self-care. That is really, really important. I get asked that by peer supporters a lot. You turn your phone off when you go home?
Yes.
Like, yes, I do. I do today. I can't say I always did that. Like, all these new peer supporters across the state, you start out and you're eager and you want to help people, and it's a little bit selfish because you want to make sure that you're always there for everybody. And that's really not about everybody else. That's really becomes about you. And it's the feeling that you get, the reward that you get back. But once I began to turn it off and say no and set these boundaries, I found that I was actually a much healthier, much better peer supporter. And then it doesn't bleed into your personal life. You're doing something at home, even just having dinner or watching a movie, and the phone rings and it's that peer that needs support. Oh, I got to go take this. But now you're impeding on your personal time when you're supposed to be focused on you and your family and taking care of yourself. And so that ends up getting shortchanged along the way, right? So,
yeah.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too is, taking classes, and this can be both in the professional and personal side, but learning things, like you can go to an adult education course, or it can even be a continuing education that's specific to your work, but getting out of the office setting or the recovery center, wherever you're working, and going somewhere else, right, can really help sort of, again, it shakes up your standard routine. Okay, today I'm going and I'm going to go do this. I think really helpful. And again, that can be a, adult ed kind of thing. Hey, I want to learn how to play pickleball or something, and you're going to go do that. Now I'm helping the physical side of my life. Or like you, right? I mean, with the theater.
Yeah.
I'm sure you get some of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The theater is actually kind of a weird thing for me because it's my job, but also something that I like to do and that's helpful for me. And there are certainly different aspects of that. There are certain things that are my job and certain things that I do just for fun.
Sure.
But I think it's hard to be effective in whatever your job is if it's on all the time, right? If you don't take a step back away from it. And I think, a term that we use sometimes is, refill your cup, right? So I know, like, for the theater specifically, when I get wrapped up too much in the marketing piece of it, then the fun piece of that starts to be more difficult for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think having as many of these tools in the toolbox as you can is really important. And, hobbies, having things that you're interested in on a personal level, whether, that can be, you can be artistic and paint or draw or photography. It can be gaming, playing a video game that helps you sort of escape.
Yeah.
Somebody just shared this with me, watching a movie about outer space, right? And takes you, out of your world and you're thinking about something else and fantasizing and that we really need to have those going on in our life. And I think particularly now, there's a lot of stress in the world. There's a lot of anxiety going on around the world. And then for those of us in recovery, that's just another stressor that we're having to deal with. And so having hobbies where you can step away and do something else. I remember, Andi, when you took peer support training, you were doing, what were you doing? Crocheting or knitting or?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right?
I crochet in meetings.
Yeah.
Because it helps me focus, really. It's like people doodle and stuff. Yeah. So it helps me focus, but it's also relaxing, right? So I will do that in the evenings if I'm, going to watch TV. Sometimes my hands need something to do. So instead of scrolling through Facebook on my phone or something, it's better if I just find something like that to do, something creative to do.
Plus it like in your case, you're making something.
Yeah.
Right. And I always think about, you see people, everybody's got their nose in their phone constantly. And I think most of the time that's you're not really taking care of yourself. That's not really what that is, right? It's distraction, right? It's like, oh, I need to.
Yeah.
So I think there are apps that you can use for self-care for sure. But I think being mindful, like some of the keys to this is one, I think being mindful of what you're doing.
Yeah.
This is to take care of myself. That's why I'm doing this, whatever this is for you, right? And so I think that's really important. Plus, I think when you develop a more robust tools around self-care, I really think it helps me grow as a person, because I'm learning new things. Not only am I learning the new hobby or whatever I'm doing, right? But I'm growing as a person also, and I'm becoming more well-rounded. And I'm also experimenting, learning what is of interest to me. What do I like? There's certain things, hobbies I might try, and it's not that interesting to me, right? Working with clay. This was one that I just stumbled along. It was a group, that I came up with in the drop-in center, and working with hand clay and shaping and making things. I mean, this is something I've been doing for like 10 years now. I enjoy it, and I'm very focused, and I'm definitely taking care of myself. I'm not thinking about other things when I'm doing it. Feels good. And so I encourage you, the listener, to experiment and think about, what are those things? How are you going to focus in on yourself, and whatever dimension it falls under? I think you've got to develop that. I think it's an important part of recovery, but I also think it's a bigger part of overall wellness. When you agree with that, Andi?
Yeah, and I think sometimes, and I think when you get started, if you're really going to do this, you might have to schedule it.
For sure.
It's easy to just let things go if they don't seem important. And so I would recommend that you schedule something, even a little thing every day, if you can, that is a self-care kind of strategy or tool.
Right. I mean, to get yourself into the practice of it. And it really does need to become a practice, I think. That's so important, that having these things that you're going to do that give you pleasure and are going to take your mind off, whether it's the virus outbreak or it's work or, an argument with a partner or a family member or whatever, but just to be able to take your mind off that. And what are you going to do? And really, you might need to make a list, and you might need to write them down. And we've been using this self-care wheel.
Yeah.
And there's a ton of them out there. Here's where you can use your phone and you can Google, self-care, dimensions of self-care, or self-care wheel, or life balance wheel, another name for it. You can find all kinds of them. I mean, there's those ones. You ever do one of those, Andi, one of those where you score it? Where you score each of these?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so you can see which parts you need more work on, and that kind of thing. It gives you like a little circle graph kind of, Yeah.
So I would encourage the listener to think about that. And, if you're really meticulous and you want to score it all and track it that way, you can, or you can make lists, but I think it's really important for us in recovery. And again, particularly right now with everything going on, it's important that we do that we take time to not watch all the updates and the tweets and the, because they're just constant, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're just one after another. So to be able to escape, to step away, what are you going to do? Something different.
Yeah.
What's that going to look like for you?
Well, I think we're about out of time for today. Remember, if you are interested in being a guest on one of our podcasts, you can just send one of us an email, Jim or Andi at mtpeernetwork.org. We're interested in having lots of different people on as guests, and our topics are pretty broad. So make sure you check out the other podcasts that we have. Also, our webinars and social media and all of those things.
Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in.
Recovery works and recovery is possible.
Recovery works and recovery is possible.
Recovery works, recovery is possible.
Recovery is possible.
Recovery works and recovery is possible.
Recovery works and recovery is possible.
Recovery works and recovery is possible.